DeFi Slate team.
What's up, y'all? Real quick, if you like the DeFi Slate content on Twitter and YouTube and Substack, please give us a like and a subscribe on this video on YouTube. Join our channel, join the community. We'd really appreciate it. We're pumping this stuff out for y'all as much as we can, and we really enjoy the support and the community that we've built. Thank you very much and enjoy.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to episode 47 of the DeFi by Design podcast. We are here today on a beautiful day in Florida. I'm back home here, about to meet up with Robbie soon. And yeah, we're hanging out today with Chris from the Badger protocol, the honey badgers go roar. I'm sure you've seen some crazy videos on YouTube of honey badgers going after rattlesnakes. Honey badgers are an interesting animal, but today we're going to be talking further about DeFi, the collaboration of NFTs and DeFi, some of the vision of what is going to bring DeFi back to the forefront in terms of attention and the narrative. And yeah, guys, in this episode, you'll learn about the interest-bearing opportunities of Bitcoin, how you can kind of bring your Bitcoin into the DeFi world. So if you are a Bitcoin holder, on Cash App or on Coinbase, or you have a ledger, right, you're going to hear some interesting information about how you can earn some yield and some boost on that Bitcoin, as well as the gamification of DeFi. I think that a lot of the reasons why NFTs have done so well recently is because they're a lot of fun. So I think if we can bring that fun into DeFi, I think we'll see some really interesting growth. So all these things to be explored in this podcast. So guys, sit tight, enjoy, and I'll pass it over to Rob.
Yeah. What's up, Andy? So super stoked to have Chris from Badger on the podcast today. And you mentioned gamification in DeFi, and I think that's huge. We've kind of seen just these primitive financial products that are unlocking a lot of markets, but it's only entertaining because it's something new, and I think people thrive off that. So bringing NFTs and more traditional gamification mechanisms to DeFi, I think is going to further onboard people and make DeFi more comfortable, more fun, more entertaining, and ultimately, onboard a lot more of the masses. I don't know too much about Badger, so I'm stoked to dig into the platform a bit more. I have heard just the amount of overwhelming demand that there is for Bitcoin on Ethereum, on these other chains. 1% of Bitcoin, I believe, is now wrapped and put onto Ethereum and onto other chains in DeFi. So I know Badger is one of the leaders in the space, and just keen to explore Badger and all the possibilities there with Chris. So I'll pass it over to you, Chris, and let you introduce yourself.
What's up, boys? Having me. Glad to be here and just chat and rap about whatever you guys want to rap about. Gamification sounds fun, DeFi sounds fun, and of course, always talking about Badger gets me fired up. But yeah, just to give everybody a little bit of an intro, Badger's been around now about almost a year, about 9 months, 10 months in that range. And really, it has a singular focus, and that's to bring Bitcoin to DeFi. For those that don't know what that means, if you have Bitcoin, so there's, there will only ever be 21 million Bitcoin, and a large percentage of that Bitcoin's been mined already, but that lives on the Bitcoin network. And the Bitcoin network and the Ethereum network are two different networks. And other, there's a bunch of other blockchains, of course, as well. But until the last year, I think in the beginning of 2020, there was only 1,000 Bitcoins that were actually brought over to other networks to be leveraged and utilized. And then some people will say, well, why would I even bring my Bitcoin over there? Well, on these other networks, like on Ethereum, there's different use cases for that Bitcoin. And people call them decentralized finance applications, but these applications allow users to do different things with their digital assets. That could be lend them out, to earn some interest. That can be borrow against them if you have different types of strategies. That could be deposit them into a platform that generates interest for you through different types of strategies, something similar to what Badger does. There's a whole slew of different things that you can do, including trading them, exchanging them on decentralized exchanges and things along those lines. So when we started Badger, we have this belief that Bitcoin is the ultimate digital asset, and Ethereum and of course other chains, but Ethereum primarily is the the best permissionless platform ever made. So how do we bridge the two and be the proponent to help people not only bring the Bitcoin to Ethereum and other chains, but also to give it utility when it's there and build the applications necessary for them to put it to work. So that was, the premise, but different from many businesses or organizations. We're not, a centralized entity, legal entity with, a CEO and all these different people and all, things along those lines. We're a community-run business. So from launch, we've had, I think, almost 66 or 67 different proposals, but we have a governance infrastructure, and anyone that holds Badger tokens has a say in how the business makes its decisions, how it manages its money, how it invests that money, how it progresses the product, and a variety of different things like that. So, our vision is always, we believe that there's going to be hundreds of thousands of decentralized organizations because the people are going to demand transparency and want to have a say into the applications or products that they use every day. And we're trying to spearhead that. So Badger is built by the community, for the community. Everyone in our community is a honey badger. We share a similar value and belief system. We're relentless, we're fierce, no one can fuck with us, and we're small but mighty. So that's a little bit about Badger. We have a whole slew of products, all focused around Bitcoin, and more than happy to jump into what that looks like.
Sweet. Yeah, it's awesome. I mean, all the above sounds great. It's been an interesting experiment really to see this transition of bringing Bitcoin onto Ethereum. There's a lot of hardcore Bitcoiners who kind of are against the whole idea, and there's a lot of people who have Bitcoin and are just willing to transfer it over. I'm kind of curious, as a cold storage Bitcoin holder myself, in the premise of not wanting to take any extra risk with holding that asset. What's kind of the way that you guys have gotten over the obstacle of like, okay, if you're, for our listeners, if you're a Bitcoin holder, on a ledger, bring your Bitcoin over to Ethereum, so handling that process, and then also staking it to earn, any yield on Badger. What's been the process there as far as onboarding those people who are kind of, let's say, risk averse when it comes to holding in cold storage? What's the pitch, or what's the process there for our listeners who hold some Bitcoin, but aren't too sure about moving it over to Ethereum and experimenting?
Well, in the end of the day, it all comes down to, a risk and reward profile. Like at this point in the technological curve, it's super early. So that brings like a bunch of additional risks that most people might not be comfortable with. And like, that's one thing that I always tend to say is like, anything that you're going to be using and touching now is very risky, right? So if you aren't comfortable with a higher threshold of risk, regardless of the returns are, like, don't even bother. And things are going to get much less risky as smart contracts get more battle tested and there's more capital in the system and there's more infrastructure that's built around it. But today it is on the riskier scale, if you were to look at it as a scale. But for the most part, those that are bridging, which again, I think Alex suggested this, only the numbers at 1.25% of all Bitcoin, it's like 275,000 Bitcoins, has now been bridged over and being used. So that that's like super small, right? Like it's only 1%, it's nothing. But Bitcoin's represents 50% of the market cap of the entire cryptocurrency industry. So that is a substantial amount of capital, billions of dollars. So today, there is still an enormous amount of people that aren't doing it, but the people that are doing it, from what we've gathered, is people that, they're looking for a bigger reward. They don't want to just sit on their Bitcoin and keep it in cold storage. They want to be able to earn more and get more out of it. At the same time, with the explosion of DeFi and open source platforms like Badger, although you are moving it from cold storage and you're bringing it to another network, and there's obviously different custodial risks associated with the bridging aspect, when you're there, it's very much so attuned to, being able to hold and control your keys and your assets. So many DeFi platforms, including Badger, we don't control your keys. You don't have to like send Bitcoin to us and then worry about us custodying it and all this type of stuff. Like, you hold your keys, you can deposit and withdraw anytime you want. You can see to the second exactly what's happening with your Bitcoin and many other protocols are like this, 𝗍𝗍, 𝗨, a variety of others. So that's the big difference, right? Like today, there's very little options to earn interest on your Bitcoin. The options that you do have requires you to trust another counterparty. You need to go to a BlockFi, a Celsius, a group like that, and just say, hey, here's my Bitcoin. Then you don't know what happens after that, right? It's like a black box. And personally, I feel that's enormously more risky than using decentralized technology to bridge your assets over and then to have control of your assets and know exactly what's going on with it. But as it relates to Badger, we have a Badger bridge where you can come with native Bitcoin, use your Ledger device, use your Trezor, use whatever device or software wallet you want to use, and you can bridge it onto Ethereum right in our app. And the app's app.badger.finance, and you'll see the Bitcoin bridge there. Once it's there, there'll be a whole slew of different things that you can do with it. There's a variety of different, we call them set vaults or vaults, that you can deposit your Bitcoin into. Each of those vaults have a different smart contract strategy, so they have a different way of earning interest, and that's reflected in the amount of interest that you can earn. So you would pick which one that you'd want to deposit into, and then once you deposit into there, then you can really just sit back and let the smart contracts do the work. And whenever you want to withdraw, you can withdraw. And there's a whole bunch of other things that you can do once you're deposited, but that's more for like an advanced user, getting IBBTC or, participating in boosts and things along those lines. But nonetheless, to answer your question, Andy, like that's what it is.
Cool. Yeah. And Chris, you mentioned the native Badger bridge, and how you guys are deployed on Ethereum, and it's really the prime place to earn interest on your Bitcoin. For someone that has kind of gotten over, trusting smart contracts, and they take that step like, okay, I'm ready to bring my Bitcoin maybe out of cold storage. I still have my private keys, and I want to earn some interest on it. What is the reason why? Well, to take a step back, DeFi on Bitcoin is I guess starting to pick up a little bit of steam, and it's not something that we really have covered too much on this show. I'm keen to understand if you think that has any runway, and if someone is ready to earn interest on their Bitcoin, why would they move it over to Ethereum if there is a potential to earn interest on the native Bitcoin blockchain?
Well, there isn't today, and there won't be for a long time. In my opinion, any of the risks associated with using the solutions that exist today, which in most instances are side chains that use the underlying security of the Bitcoin network, but you're not actually on the Bitcoin network in most cases. I personally trust the Ethereum network and the underlines of the Ethereum network much more so than the potential side chains of Bitcoin, but also the compatibility of all the tools and ecosystem that exists around it. So for example, like in the Ethereum ecosystem, there's so much more you can do with that Bitcoin. It's not just like one singular solution. So based on your risk tolerance, you can look at more immature protocols, more mature protocols. You can get insurance. You can do a variety of things that really doesn't exist with DeFi on Bitcoin. And I'm not saying that it would never be a thing. I do think there is going to be a place for it, and I'm not against it by any means. But today, it's much more immature than than Bitcoin on Ethereum or any of these other chains, right? There's, put in perspective, there's more Bitcoin sitting on Polygon or Avalanche than there is, in Lightning or being used in some of the DeFi on Bitcoin solutions that exist out there.
Yeah, and maybe this plays into your vision of how the multi-chain really fits together. But I agree with you. I don't think Bitcoin really has the infrastructure for handling as many transactions as that are necessary. And even so, just Ethereum has the infrastructure. It has this robust community and system of applications that, to me, is just way far and advanced over any other chain at the moment. They just have too much of a first mover advantage over any other chain. Like if Bitcoin, really what was to start driving DeFi or Polygon or Avalanche. Yeah, I think Ethereum just has the infrastructure, and it's a robust system that can't really be touched by some of these other platforms.
And shouldn't any Bitcoiner really be happy about coins moving on to other chains? Like, sure, it might contribute to the total value locked or to the efficiency of Ethereum or Polygon or Avalanche, etc. But doesn't theoretically that lower the supply available on the Bitcoin chain, right? So therefore, there's less Bitcoin to be had, because when you transfer that Bitcoin over to Ethereum, it's basically, I mean, the way that I think about it is it's locked in like escrow for wrap Bitcoin or for rent Bitcoin 1-to-1 type of experience. And then when you bring it over, that amount of Bitcoin is kind of let go. So theoretically, it should even shorten the supply of Bitcoin on the main chain.
Yeah, most certainly will. I just come from a place like, and I've been a Bitcoiner for a long time. I've been an Ethereum enthusiast for a long time. Like, there's no place for maximalism on any side of the fence, right? Like, this is one, big fight that we're trying to create a new financial system. We're trying to create new money. We're trying to break down borders. We're trying to do some crazy stuff. And we need everyone to work together to accomplish this. So like these maximalism fractions within the ecosystem, I've always believed them to be stupid. And I don't think they really do any good for us. It's just a way for people to talk shit on Twitter and whatever the hell they want to do, right? So we just need to come together and have more of a joint effort, because that's the only way we're actually going to win the real fight. And the real fight is what I described earlier.
Chris, maybe you could unpack that a bit more. Like, we're changing we're making new money. We're making a new financial system. What is the real fight? Like, is there an obstacle or an opponent here, or is it simply just evolution?
Well, honestly, many would argue, and I would argue, is the fiat system's broken, and then the banking systems are broken, right? These are not sustainable. Something that could be hundreds of years. Like, their models at the core are broken. So when you look at those things, that's what we're trying to build. We're trying to build an open financial system, a financial system where there isn't a bunch of bloated middlemen taking a cut all the way down. It's peer-to-peer. It's two people with two specific needs that are able to interact with each other while controlling their assets and dictating the terms of that interaction. No matter if you're in Florida or if you're in Afghanistan or if you're in Toronto or if you're in China or if you're in Russia, like, it really doesn't matter. Wherever you are in the world, you have the ability to have financial services on your terms. And then from a fiat perspective, I don't want to have to go down the fiat over Bitcoin. Like, Bitcoin is a superior currency in every sense of the matter. And I think that over time, a global currency, a borderless currency, a fixed currency, I think will be able to win the overall fight. It's not going to be, there's a lot of people with power here that, have vested interest in not letting these systems go away. And it's not going to be something that happens anytime soon. It's going to be a really long effort, and it's going to be something that takes a very long time. But it's, you can't refute technology. This is part of the technological revolution that we've been in for a period of time. And then it's just, in my opinion, it's just the beginning of what that revolution is going to look like.
Yeah, I mean, that's been the ethos of the ecosystem for some time, and it never gets old kind of hearing it and reminding yourself amidst all the speculation and games and madness, kind of what everybody's here for, to accomplish together really and try to grow. And I mean, I think we're just now seeing these larger players come into the space and kind of really establish positioning. We had Visa buy CryptoPunk, right? Even more so, signaling their desire to get into the space. They didn't buy Bitcoin, they didn't buy Ethereum, they bought a CryptoPunk. It's just kind of an interesting concept there, but just getting these larger players in. And a lot of the larger players that are in the game were early Bitcoin users or adopters, people who started funds early, who invested early with small investment club-esque groups, and now even so much larger banks and such like that. So I'm curious what your experience has been.
Everyone's a Bitcoiner, Andy. Yes. Everyone's a Bitcoiner. No matter how, I always like to say this, everyone's a badger. Because if you've been in this space for any period of time, your most likely entry was Bitcoin. A friend telling you, hey, buy some Bitcoin, or you looking at the risk and reward, or from a security perspective, or even from a distribution and value perspective, like Bitcoin represents half of the market cap, and it was like 80% and 70% the last few years, right? So everyone that's in crypto either has Bitcoin or had Bitcoin, in my opinion. The percentage of people that hadn't are unbelievably small, and that's what I think to be a fact. So that's where I like to say everyone's a badger, because if you have Bitcoin, then you're a badger.
Exactly. And I mean, some of these larger players who have been getting into Bitcoin, they need to know about this opportunity to earn yield. So have you guys had any talks with any, large whales about bringing their Bitcoin into Badger, or thought about maybe creating a more institutional level feel platform, for these types of players to kind of bring their Bitcoin into Badger? What are your thoughts on that and experiences so far?
Well, we don't talk to like whales or like people, right? We're not in the market of trying to convince people to deposit in the app. It's an open software, and anybody with the wallet, we don't need to know who you are, can deposit. On the institutional side, we're building for that, right? We had an announcement earlier this year about an integration with Fireblocks, which is one of the largest institutional networks, digital asset networks, with like over $300 or $400 billion that have gone through that network. And the way that we see it is, we're just building smart contracts. We're building open source smart contracts. And if you think about how institutions get access to lending and borrowing services, so like first and foremost, like, are institutions going to want to get DeFi type services and benefits? Of course they're going to. It's like literally, that's like what the entire system's built on, right? You put money in your bank lends it out. There's a whole, like, that's just how shit works. So when you look at, what the appetite's going to be, it's there. It's not too far from what they're already used to. It's just a different way of approaching it. There's some compliancy, there's operational issues associated with getting there. But the way that we see it is, we've built, and we're going to continue to advance and build the smart contract that any centralized, decentralized platform, institutional, retail, or whatever in the world would want to integrate, because if their users have Bitcoin in their platform, they're going to want to get some type of service for that Bitcoin or earn on that Bitcoin. As an example, PayPal, right? How much 200 or 300 million people use PayPal? There's an enormous amount of Bitcoin. Cash App's another example. Obviously, a lot of centralized exchanges. And they're not just going to sit back and let DeFi eat their lunch. But DeFi, that's what's beautiful about DeFi. DeFi doesn't give a shit. Yeah, come to our app, or go to another app that's using our smart contracts. It doesn't matter. There can be 1,000 interfaces for the same smart contracts. And that's what's beautiful about it all. So in terms of Badger's focus, we're focused on doing the best job at creating sustainable yield on Bitcoin through our smart contracts, and then empowering other platforms to integrate our smart contracts to offer those services to their users. And that was kind of the ideation of our product, interest-bearing Bitcoin. So we have a product called IBBTC, and what it is, it's backed 1-to-1 by Bitcoin that's deposited in our yield-bearing vault systems, right? So you deposit in our vaults, our smart contracts run strategies, that Bitcoin in there earning interest now backs interest-bearing Bitcoin, and it's kind of like an index or a basket of different yield-bearing activities. So the average of all those yield-bearing activities is the yield or interest on interest-bearing Bitcoin. So anyone that holds it is earning interest simply by holding it. And we think that's probably the easiest on-ramp in the world for bringing anyone that's not into DeFi into DeFi. Because if you assume most people own Bitcoin, and then the first thing they're going to want to do when thinking about DeFi is to start earning on their Bitcoin, if you can literally just say one click, swap or deposit or whatever you want to call it into interest-bearing Bitcoin, and it happens in seconds, now you're earning and you can redeem it at any time. You have complete control of your assets. You have transparency into exactly what's happening. But more importantly, it's just ridiculously easy. It's one button. We feel like that's how we can bring millions of people into this. And enable other platforms to offer that to their users as well, to hundreds of millions of people.
Yeah, it's definitely it. I mean, it's the key into the system, as you say, and it brings up a level of permissionless and kind of the nature of what DeFi really stands for by using that in comparison to, you know, BlockFi and other platforms. Which this idea of earning yield on crypto assets is finally, you know, coming to light to a lot of people who are just holders. So it's definitely good, you know, to be a holder, and, you know, if you can earn yield on that, you know, through Badger, other platforms in the smart contract world of DeFi, that's where, you know, that's where that next kind of interest of the entire space has been moving. I mean, we've been in it for a year and a half now, at least, so it kind of seems like it's normal, but really it's just getting off of the ground. You know, I'm kind of curious.
Kind of 4 pillars, Andy. Like, you know, the way I was talking to, we're doing a revamp of our app, so we were working with like the UX and UI team yesterday, and we were going through like the journey into crypto and the different buckets of people. And like, you know, the way I look at it is, you have someone that's never owned or doesn't own cryptocurrency, right? Like, that's bucket 1. Then you have someone that buys cryptocurrency but doesn't hold their own keys. So that's them going to Coinbase, clicking a couple buttons, buying some Bitcoin or Ethereum. That's usually them buying Bitcoin or Ethereum as well, right? Then you got the next stage in bucket 3 is someone that wants to take custody of their own assets and take control of their funds and their assets and be responsible for the security of those funds. And that's like a pretty big jump for people. It's a pretty big learning curve. There's a lot of scary things that can happen, and there's a lot of responsibility. And they're still holding, right? That's them holding. Now we're already through like 3 buckets. The 4th bucket is someone that's holding their keys and says, I wanna do something with these assets. I want to do something with them. And in that rabbit hole is where, you know, the whole DeFi ecosystem opens up. And then eventually all these centralized exchanges and platforms are going to start offering those types of services, so they don't lose their users, and users take their assets off their exchange. But like, that's the bucket that we're playing in, us and almost all other platforms. It's like, there's such a big audience here, never mind someone that doesn't even know about crypto, and that every single day is just growing and growing and growing. And now we're seeing on-ramps like NFTs that are bringing people in and teaching them how to use MetaMask, how to buy Ethereum, how to acquire an NFT, how to trade it, how to sell it, you know, all this type of stuff. So all these on-ramps are just going to continue to expand over time, and eventually get to the point where, you know, more and more people fill that 4th bucket. But it's important for platforms to look at, like, how do you attract those other buckets as well? And, you know, that aligns closely with Badger's mission, because we try to make it as simple and as easy as possible, right? We try and say, like, earn on your Bitcoin, you know, that's it. You know, the Badger brand is a very consumer facing brand, something that makes people feel comfortable and confident. One of the reasons why the community decided to buy Badger.com. And if you think about, you know, where we eventually go is you come to Badger.com and it's one click, you're earning on your Bitcoin. And then you're open up to this whole world of like, what can you do with it while you're earning? And like, what is Badger, and like, how do I actually have control in that? But like, it's just this very comfortable, familiar experience as it relates to, you know, other apps that they're used to, or other types of brands, or just things along those lines. So that's how we see kind of the different buckets of user personas and progression within the crypto industry.
Yeah, and you mentioned NFTs and kind of the positioning that Badger has in the crypto community as one for the masses, not really this esoteric exclusive yield farm that's tough to get into, but something that is very easily accessible and open to all. Could you explore or just kind of move us through the progression of kind of the vision that you have for Badger over the next, you know, short term, midterm, long term, and just essentially what's coming next? Yeah, interested in it.
Yeah, Rob, no doubt. So, you know, call it what it is, right? Our platform today and our app today is not for the masses by any stretch of the imagination, right? You have all these different vaults that you have to choose from. You have to have already gone to a platform to get, you know, a certain flavor of Bitcoin, like go to Curve and deposit an LP and bring it to Badger. And then there's a bunch of stuff you can do to optimize your return. And, you know, you have to claim your rewards all the time, and majority of the interest in those rewards. Like today, it's by no means ready for the masses. But that's, you know, part of finding product market fit, right? Like by being able to focus on a gap in the market, which was there wasn't a trusted and, you know, singular place within the Ethereum ecosystem to earn interest on your Bitcoin that's already been bridged or that you're in the process of bridging to. That was our opportunity. And that's, you know, how we got off the ground. And like any organization, like it's important to get off the ground to have, you know, a base set of users, to find an opportunity to generate revenue and to do those types of things. So that's, you know, that's how Badger started. And, you know, selfishly, I'll suggest, or biasly, I'll suggest, like, you know, we did a pretty good job, right? Like we're on track of eclipsing $50 million in revenue this year. The treasury is very healthy, which is a process of different tokens that we have in there, including, you know, hundreds of Bitcoin and Ethereum and Badger and USDC and a variety of other things. But as we look to the future, it kind of goes back, Rob, to what I was saying, right? Like that is our guiding star. You know, our North Star, our big picture is one click to earn interest on your Bitcoin in seconds, right? You don't need to know which chain, you don't need to wrap it, you don't need to do anything. Like we do the rest. You literally come and press a button. And not only in our app, but you do that in apps for hundreds of platforms that integrate Badger in our smart contracts, because they want to offer that service to their users, since their users demand that service. And if they don't give it to them, they're going to just go somewhere else and go use that service where they want it. So that's really, you know, our vision. Now, how do you get there? That's, you know, that's where the rubber meets the road, right? Because the industry is so mature, the market and the technology infrastructure is so immature. Bridging infrastructure, for example, and L2s, those are really just starting to accelerate. Even different yield opportunities for Bitcoin, that's still relatively immature. You know, the UI and UX and how that all ties together, again, is far from where it needs to be. So for us, it's about systematically accomplishing some of those, things, so that we can wrap it into kind of one bundle eventually, right? So, you know, we launched kind of as our first foot in the water, like looking at the multi-chain universe. We launched on Binance, and that was a whole initiative and learning experience for us. But as we come into the fall, we're pretty much going to be on, you know, every chain where there's Bitcoin. We're getting ready to launch on Arbitrum, Polygon, and a variety, Optimism as well, a variety of others. Just going to assume that wherever there's Bitcoin, like Badger's going to want to be with our yield and our vault products. So that systematically, like once we're on those chains, if you think about it that way, that when someone deposits, eventually we can pick and choose like on which chain is the best yield opportunity for that user, go get it and bring it back to the user, and the users really need to worry about that, right?
Yeah.
So
just to,
you know, that,
not to interrupt, but like that's I think an important concept is bridging, working behind the scenes. And you know, you might deposit on one chain but then earn yield on another.
Well, certainly, yeah, of course. It's going to be like that. And like the smart it's right now the smart contracts can't even like permissionlessly, you know, talk to the yield opportunities on those other chains, right? Like it's a very manual process in bridging and relying on users to go bridge there first and then have those smart contracts there. Like, you know, it's far from it. So for us, it's about having that infrastructure built and running smoothly, and obviously having capital there and making sure everything's rocking and rolling on those chains. And then systematically, it's also critical for us to get IBBTC everywhere. We need a ton of utility and we need a ton of liquidity. And we need that liquidity on every chain to make it kind of that dominant Bitcoin cross chain, which again allows for anyone to go from Bitcoin into it. And then, you know, there's just a whole infrastructure on how that's earning yield. So that's a big process for us. Just yesterday, we put a proposal forward and a gauge vote on Curve to have interest-bearing Bitcoin added on Curve, which we would subsequently have a vault and strategy around it to drive a lot of liquidity and also, you know, get people using IBBTC there. And then as they look to launch gauge voting and permissionless pools on all their other chains like XDAI and Phantom and Polygon and Avalanche or whatever, you know, we're going to kind of follow that same process and be able to bring IBBTC to those chains with tons of liquidity. And then, you know, the actual bridge and the bridge product and the bridging side is another big initiative, right? So we're getting ready to launch the ability to bridge Bitcoin to Polygon and to Phantom, and then subsequently to Solana and Arbitrum. And we partner with Ren, so as they expand their footprint, we expand as well. And with our bridge product, we always have our mint and earn functionality, which makes it more unique than others, where you can deposit Bitcoin and then start earning immediately, rather than having to deposit, take your tokenized Bitcoin, and then find a place to earn. For us, it's just that one click, and then you're earning. So again, we got to make sure that we can bridge to those places. We got to make sure that there's vault and yield strategies on those places. We got to make sure IBBTC has deep liquidity and utility across all these places, and then we eventually bring it back into one kind of simple click experience. We also have an incubator to which a protocol called ZeroDAO is in the process of getting ready to launch, and they've created a protocol that allows for transferring Bitcoin from the Bitcoin network onto other chains within a few seconds. And as we integrate that, because today it takes about an hour usually, based on what type of solution you want to use. But once we get that integrated and involved in our stack, again, that's just another step. In the beginning, it's going to be a little clunky, right? You're going to have to click a bunch of buttons and blah, blah, blah. But then eventually, we bring it into this seamless and smooth experience. So that's what's on deck. It's all going towards that North Star, as I mentioned. We think the opportunity is absolutely massive, multi-trillion-dollar opportunity. And we're going to do it the way that we do it, right? Grassroots, community-led, by the community, for the community.
Epic. Yeah. My biggest takeaway from, the entire vision is the usage of IBBTC as almost overtaking any other form of Bitcoin collateral in DeFi. And I think kind of the same thing is happening with staked ETH on Lido, kind of a similar concept. Do you see that as, as coming to fruition for those pairs, kind of taking away the need for just having a normal ETH or a normal wrapped Bitcoin, and just eventually DeFi gets to a place where, every form of ETH and Bitcoin collateral that is, deeply liquid are the ones that are just always earning yield?
Yeah, it's just, it's a super collateral, right? Yeah,
right.
I think, I don't think it totally dominates, like 99%, but I do think it's just going to be the leading choice for people. It's like, you can use ETH or WBTC or whatever, or you can use an interest-bearing version if it has the same utility, has the same trust parameters, and the same liquidity. Like, why wouldn't you use it, right? Correct. You're earning while putting it to work, versus not earning and putting it to work in the same place. Like, if you had interest-bearing Bitcoin, STE, ETH, and WBTC on Aave and Compound, and it costs X amount to borrow, and then the interest you're earning on those assets is even higher than what it even costs to borrow. Like, why wouldn't you use the interest-bearing version of those, right? Now, of course, there's a lot of work to be done around building not only the trust in the users, but the underlying security structure for that, to ensure that it meets that appropriate standard for mass use. But that's what's coming, right? That's what's, again, it's all about systematically making the steps towards a similar goal. I'm a huge fan of Lido, and what they've done is amazing. If I'm not mistaken, yesterday they announced that they have over 1 million ETH staked at this moment, which is a massive accomplishment. And I think it's critical that we use decentralized protocols for staking ETH versus the centralized counterparts. And I think Lido is going to overtake many of the decentralized counterparts in the long run, for the simple fact of utility, right? Like, why would you go to an exchange and let them do it if you can do it with Lido and then earn another 25% by putting it to work in these 3 protocols?
Exactly. If it can be used as collateral and be a beneficiary of the money Legos that exist right now, versus just putting it into Coinbase or something else. And I thought that this would have already been created for USD and stablecoins now in DeFi. I remember Andre and Yearn tried to do YUSD and made a case back in 2020 about how this could be, the stablecoin of DeFi. But I'm kind of shocked that we're still trading normal stablecoins, and that we don't have a USDC or other, YUSD as just super deep with liquidity, and just always be trading a form of cash that is earning yield. That's still kind of a surprise to me that we're just using typical stable coins. But I think, as you say, Chris, it comes down to that security and trust of users. USDC USDT versus, you know, a DeFi native stablecoin that is, you know, in some other smart contracts, right? So it's kind of a get what you get right now in terms of security. But yeah, I'm still a little bit surprised that ETH and Bitcoin might be used as collateral in terms of earning yield before we get yield bearing stablecoins as super liquid and common in many pairs.
Yeah, and also
to that point, why do you
getting
think
yield on those stable coins is, you know, just like on Bitcoin and on ETH, it's not easy right now, right? Like there's not that many ways to consistently create yield, no matter how great a smart contract you could build. Like the opportunities just aren't there at scale to the tune of $100 billion, for example, right? Like right now it's primarily built on the foundation of other protocols giving incentives and rewards away, and then the market obviously putting value on those incentive and rewards, to which there's an ability to generate interest by, you know, doing things with those rewards if your protocol earns those. Like that's not something that can last forever, obviously not. And it's because of that and the volatility in that it makes it difficult to sustain a certain interest on an asset, like interest-bearing Bitcoin, like interest-bearing stable coins or ETH. But again, over time, that's all going to change. Like we're seeing the beginnings. Like these are all flashes. These are all flashes and early indications of what's going to come. And if you just look at the how fast this market is propelling, I think we're at 150 billion now, or something along those lines in DeFi. Like that's going to be 10, 20, 30 trillion dollars, like pretty darn quick. And it's wild. Like I think Compound is bigger and Aave is bigger than 80% or 90% of banks in the world, something stupid like that, right? Like, and this is the early days, and you're doing it, you know, it's all permissionless software, not like banks with tellers, with certain regulations in certain jurisdictions, with slow wire transfers and all that type of BS, right? None of that exists.
Yeah, and now we're building the infrastructure to handle all those transactions with just a piece of code. And it's all automated. At the end of the day, that, you know, we talk about the lack of security, but really as these contracts become more resilient and more battle tested, like you said, Chris, they are more secure than somewhere where there's a potential of human error in a teller or a physical location or you know, just money changing hands through different intermediaries. And I think with regards to the stablecoin environment, I was going to bring up a question. Why do you guys think Aave, like A tokens, you know, there's certainly demand. We're talking about it right now for interest-bearing stablecoins. Is it the trust? Is it the security? Kind of why do you guys think that hasn't really taken off for most of the stablecoin liquidity?
I think it's a little bit difficult for the large majority to wrap their head around. I think someone would be, you also got to think, like, this is a small pool, right? Like there's massive whales that are the majority of the capital that's in the DeFi system that exists today. And, you know, as part of that, there's different vested interests and different assets that they use and things along those lines. So I think, you know, over time that's going to grow. But today, I think it's just easier for people to, you know, mint USDC or USDT or use those assets and then, you know, put them to work. And a lot of people are taking those and depositing them into and getting a USDC back, for example, or CUSDC. But nonetheless, the utility needs to grow in those as well, right? You look at, you know, the majority of what you could do with those assets, like even LPing them, you know, there's so much more liquidity and opportunity to earn interest on LPing with USDC than there is with a USDC. And I think just over time that will grow, but it needs to be, you know, concentrated effort, and there needs to be a pretty big shift that happens. And I think it will eventually, because like you said, like we've been saying, like interest-bearing versions of assets are way better. You know what I mean? And I think interest-bearing assets are going to be a massive, massive explosion.
Andy, you're on mute.
I'm curious what you think of the current issue in DeFi, which is the something for nothing problem. So basically in DeFi right now, up until the past year and a half, the only thing that you had to do to get rewards and to earn tokens was basically just be an LP. You just had to take some opportunity cost with your tokens that you were likely going to hold anyway, or obtain some tokens of a certain type in a pair and then stake them to earn yield, right? So what this does is it basically creates a yield locus. For example, Avalanche just launched their liquidity rewards over there, and people are just bridging over, flocking over to deposit and catch some of these massive APYs. But kind of what we're getting here is a problem where a lot of these people who are staking aren't necessarily loyal or aren't necessarily the best types of community members for protocols to thrive. So you're almost getting like a stakeholder versus an agent, or a principal versus an agent problem, where you have people working for a company to try to do it well, and there's people that are just kind of there for the hourly wage kind of thing. So what's your thoughts on the evolution of liquidity mining as it pertains to basically getting rid of this something for nothing? And even further, we can go into kind of like how we could do options mining, but that's that's a little deeper. First, I'd like to kind of hear your thoughts on this dilemma.
Yeah, I think it's around aligning incentives, right? Like when liquidity mining first kicked off, we got to remember there was such a low amount of liquidity, and like you need assets and liquidity to really start building the foundation. So it had a very strong purpose, and it continues to have. Like, we need to continue to drive liquidity, and we've seen this just with the explosion of capital that's inside of DeFi today, not only on Ethereum but on other chains. So in my opinion, it has been unbelievably successful in driving liquidity, but also helping bootstrap a network and community, right? Like, I can speak to Badger, of course. Like, we have, in my opinion, one of the best communities in the entire space, with unbelievably passionate individuals with a shared value and belief system. And it was really only through a liquidity mining initiative that it enabled us to find these people, build some type of aligned incentive between these people, and have these people start contributing. And as you see more and more open source protocols that are decentralized organizations, it's going to rely on passionate community members with aligned incentives to make it grow and expand. Like, sure, anybody, 10 smart people can get together and build something amazing that's like ends up becoming something huge. But if you're trying to distribute and build a community of individuals that help make those decisions and help lead that effort, my opinion, there's been nothing better than liquidity mining, at least in its previous form. I do think moving forward, there's going to be a variety of different ways to align incentives with users, and people are just going to be more mature. Like, if you think about last summer, right? Like, it's funny because I like many, like, I was liquidity mining with 𝗵𝗶𝗃𝗵 and with 𝗪𝐶i and stuff, and it's like, the game then was like, how do you sell as fast as possible while the price is like going up and going down? Like, it's just so different, right? Even in today, on how people leverage platforms and deposit liquidity, it's very, very different. And that's just going to continue to grow and change as people see examples of like what could become. Like, hey, I believe in the message and the value of this protocol because I saw what 𝗵𝗆 did, because I saw what 𝗪𝐶i did, because I saw Badger. I now have something to tie it to, which would give more confidence in what it could become. Because prior to 𝗻 and 𝗵𝗆, there wasn't examples of protocols doing a fair launch and becoming, a $1, $2, $3 billion market cap. That never happened, right? This is one of the first. So as we see more and more and more of that, there's just going to build more confidence in people not being these locuses that just come in, and there's always going to be that. But I think as we introduce different types of liquidity mining initiatives, options is a really cool one. We actually have seen quite a bit of success using options. We've collaborated with 𝗏𝗏, who you may know have their KPI options for our DIG product. And for anybody that doesn't know DIG, DIG is a synthetic rebasing Bitcoin. And with rebasing assets, it's important that there's more positive rebases than there's negative rebases, of course, to help drive the market cap and help it grow. So we did an options program over the last 3 or 4 months, and this month being the most successful, where for every positive rebase, our options pay out rewards. So it encourages and aligns incentives for people to buy and hold and to ensure that it gets into a positive rebase because there's a reward and incentive associated with it, right? So that's an example of how we're using it, and I think more and more people are going to do that moving forward.
Yep, the options mining is epic. It's going to be tough to get a lot of users who are used to just getting yield rewards instantly rather than having to kind of take a bit more risk, because effectively getting in the example that I'm speaking of, it's basically instead of earning straight yield. So let's say in the example of Curve, what you do is you actually earn a call option in this case on the asset that you're farming. And so basically, rather than just getting the asset, you get this call option with a certain strike price, which kind of helps to protect the protocol from the farm and dump because of the longevity of these, as well as the aligned incentives when it comes to everybody who is farming with these options. I mean, that combined with all sorts of vestings and lockups can certainly help. But in the example of the Badger token, right, during the end of DeFi winter, there was a strong decline in price, which led to a lot of depressed incentives for the protocol. A lot of the APYs on the protocol went down. Interest in DeFi, kind of went down, and there was just like a lack of a narrative. Now you guys have clearly bounced back from that, but I'm curious what was going on in that time when the token was just going down. Like, what was the team's kind of morale, and what was the way out of like a lower APY, lack of interest? What was the push forward that if a DeFi protocol is listening, a community member who can advise a potential protocol who's in a similar spot, what did you guys do to kind of get out of that?
Well, first and foremost, it was double down on what made us even get to that place get there in the first place, which is the community, right? Together with the community, we looked at and decided like different types of things to build and iterations to make to garner more interest, but more importantly, to give utility to the existing community, which in turn would be, the greater community moving forward. And this is where a lot of our ideas like Boost and things came out of. So we often, it's hard not to, but it's very difficult to look at the price and make decisions as it relates to the price movement, because so much of it, if not all of it's out of your control. So we just doubled down on building, focused on our North Star, our guiding light, and making that progression there and being confident in that vision. And then with the community support and them backing us and helping, and then together collectively making these decisions, it's enabled us to kind of get through some of those times, because these people that are part of the community, they care about accomplishing the vision as much as the people that are building the tech on our team care about it. So if that doesn't waver, and you build a community of people with a shared value and belief system, really any time, up or down, you can get through. Yeah.
I mean, the Badger community has never been stronger, and those times is kind of what makes the community the community. There's kind of the meme community members, but that's really what it is holding through those and working and building and helping the community is, that's what it is all about. That's awesome. Excited to have been, in the early days of Badger and participating in that. And I've seen on my own, stack, just seeing how the potential of earning yield on Bitcoin is just, it makes you never want to sell. It really lowers the sell pressure of Bitcoin, and especially when you're holding it in DeFi and earning the yield, and it's just like boom.
Yeah. Well, guys, I just want to be conscious of time, because I have a call in a few minutes here, so I just want to make sure I respect your guys' time as well. But anything else that you guys wanted to dig into and rap about?
This was a jam, Chris. No, this was great. Something that really hit home, I think, was the concentration on community, at the same time being cognizant that maximalism is detrimental to the entire system. you know, we all are part of these individual communities, but extremism is always going to, you know, throw us off the deep end. So, and that goes, you know, for any communities and just general principles in the space. So thanks, Chris, for coming on. This was great. And yeah, looking forward to all that Badger has to offer over the next, you know, coming months and years.
Yeah, guys, I really appreciate you having me on here and chatting. This is, I get fired up talking about all this stuff. So thanks for having me and messaging me.
Hell yeah, man. Appreciate you being super open with your responses and being here to talk and representing the community, as well as explaining to our community, you know, how they can get some yield on Bitcoin. I'm sure there's a bunch of people after this, after they listen just to the first 15 minutes of this, you know, will be instantly looking into Badger, getting their Bitcoin onto Ethereum. And yeah, man, thanks a lot and have a great one.
Awesome, guys.